Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Real. It's Slayer Sunday, where I'll be talking about and reviewing all the episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in order. Today I'm looking at Season 2, Episode 15, Phases. We begin the episode with Oz looking at the cheerleading trophy in the cabinet and commenting to Willow that its eyes follow him. And he's not wrong, because that's the trophy Catherine the Great got trapped in at the end of Witch. Willow asks if he liked the movie they went to last night, and the conversation is kind of awkward, so she runs off to meet Buffy, who that dipwad Larry pervs after. He's a creepy dick to some girl in the hall, and wants to know if Oz has banged Willow yet. Believe it or not, I will actually be a bit sad when this asshat eventually dies. Willow complains to Buffy that she and Oz aren't advancing their relationship, but I don't know what's more distracting, Willow's hideous skirt or the fact they're both out of focus. Ow, my eyes! Willow mistakenly says that she's the only girl in school without a real boyfriend, which upsets Buffy, so they plan to get together with Xander that evening. But he is making out with Cordelia in her car and bitching about how he doesn't trust Oz. Cordelia chastises him for talking when they should be kissing, points out the lovely full moon, and tells him to shut up. As they make out, they're perved on by a werewolf, and into the credits we go. Xander says he hears something, but Cordelia says he's imagining it. Until the werewolf punches through the roof of the car, and Cordelia has to speed away. The next morning, Buffy inspects the damage to Cordelia's car. Xander confirms that it was definitely a werewolf, and Giles reports that a number of wild dog attacks occurred last night, but no people were harmed. Because the wolf was out and wolfing the night before the full moon, they know it will be out again tonight, and Giles excitedly goes off to research.
He needs to get a pet.
In gym class, the teacher tells them they're going to learn self-defense, which is a great idea. Why didn't we get that option at my high school? And Xander notices a bandage on Larry's arm. Larry explains that he was bitten by a wild dog last week, while Oz jokingly points out that his cousin Geordie bit his finger when he tickled him. Larry comes onto this girl Teresa, and Buffy steps in, but Willow reminds her that she's not supposed to show her Slayer strength and to take it easy on him. Buffy goes along with the ruse that she's a weak little girl until Larry grabs her ass and she flings him over her shoulder.
That works too.
Giles is having a great time and explains that werewolves wolf out 3 nights of the month to cause havoc. And when Buffy comments that it's typical male behaviour, Xander gets offended and Giles points out that it's just as likely to be a woman. Xander wants to break out the silver bullets, but Giles says no because the person is still human and may not even be aware of what they really are. That night, Giles and Buffy go looking for the werewolf, only for the latter to get caught in a net and faced down by a hunter. She calls to Giles for help, who gets a face full of gun, before the hunter, who introduces himself as Kane, decides to cut Buffy down. The man, who looks familiar because he's done the rounds in every major crime show, implies that Giles and Buffy are there hooking up, and Giles almost takes his head off. Buffy tells him they're hunting a werewolf, which he finds hilarious because he's a real werewolf hunter who kills them to sell their fur. Isn't he a delight? Werewolf Dundee asks where else people gather because werewolves are drawn to crowds, but Buffy refuses to tell him and heads off in the opposite direction. Teresa from earlier is wandering home when she hears a growl and books it, only to run splat into Angel. She says she thought she heard something, and Angel checks, offering to walk her home after he finds out she knows Buffy. I'll get a screenshot ready for the death count. The bronze is bumping and Cordelia is hilariously bitching to Willow about Xander, and she confides in her that she and Oz aren't progressing.
What's he waiting for? What's his problem?
They bond over their mutual frustration and oop, there's a werewolf on the table, everybody run! Buffy races into the bronze just as someone slams the door behind her and oh dear God, what is that terrifying poster? She races towards a shadow, and nothing says 90s like a beaded curtain. Oh, the nostalgia. She has a brief scuffle with the werewolf, which looks a bit jank, and it jumps out of the window with Kane rocking up and scolding her for letting it get away. He scoffs at her for trying to catch it rather than kill it, and says that she's to blame if it hurts anyone.
Look.
Wolfie smells blood and comes across Teresa's body and faces down Angel, who decides to back away. Buffy jump scares Giles, who's fallen asleep in his car, and they hear over the radio about Teresa's death. Man, who called that in so fast? Angel or the werewolf? The sun comes up and we see Wolfie Boy laid out on the ground, only for it to shift back into Oz. That's right, my boy's a werewolf, and he takes the news in his usual Oz way.
Huh.
After getting some clothes on, Oz rings his aunt and asks if Geordie, his cousin who bit him, is a werewolf, and she confirms that he is. Hold up a second, I have a question. This is night 2, so what did Oz think was going on when he woke up naked in a strange place on night 1? Well, better lay off the shots if I woke up in a forest with my dick out, silly me! Oz is spaced out in school and walks into the library just as Buffy says she should have killed the werewolf when she had the chance. And Oz asks if everyone's okay. His little heart breaks when he hears about Teresa, and he asks if there's a way to tell who the werewolf is. Xander says he's an expert and knows what it's like to have animalistic tendencies due to that time he was a hyena. But dude, remember you lied and said you didn't have any memories of that? And Buffy calls him out on it. He goes into some sort of werewolf mind trance and realises who it is.
I'm Larry!
And heads off to go and talk to him. Willow notices that Oz seems down and invites him to spend the evening with her, but he turns her down, to her disappointment, and runs off. Xander jump scares Larry and says he knows his secret. Larry threatens him, but Xander warns that won't stop people from finding out, so Larry tries to bribe him. Xander says he identifies with him and only wants to help, but Larry says he can't talk about it because it'll ruin his reputation. He says he'll be run out of town if people find out he's gay, and suddenly feels better admitting it out loud. And Xander tries to backtrack when he realises he says he's gone through it too, but Larry promises to keep his secret. Buffy meanwhile asks Willow if anyone else fits the werewolf profile, but turns out the only other person with a violent record is her, so that's a bust. Plus, I'm pretty sure werewolves don't exclusively bite angry or violent people. Buffy notes Willow is alone and encourages her to make the first move with Oz, before meeting up with Xander, who confirms that Larry is not the werewolf. They have a brief chat by her locker, although Xander's lips move before he says the word werewolf.
Werewolf.
Anyway, Buffy has a sudden realisation that Teresa wasn't reported to have been mauled, and they go to the funeral home to confirm she was actually attacked by a vampire. Hey everyone, move to Sunnydale! None of the buildings are ever locked and you can poke dead bodies whenever you feel like it. I love this show, but the constant lack of anything being locked bugs the hell out of me. Buffy blames herself for not protecting Teresa, but Xander reminds her of how many people she's already saved.
Willow would be Robbie the robot's love slave. I wouldn't even have a head. And Teresa's a vampire.
They get into a fight, but Teresa says this.
Angel senses love.
Which distracts Buffy, so Xander has to stake her. The two share a sweet moment as he comforts her, while Dickface Kane is making silver bullets. Oz has invested in some shackles and is about to put them on when there's a knock on the door. It's Willow, of course, and she rants at him about their relationship, even though he begs her to come back tomorrow. He explains he's going through some changes, and she notices his chains and stuff.
Why do you have chains and stuff?
Don't kink shame, Willow! He tells her to get out as he starts to change, but she approaches where he fell and surprise! So she runs like hell, smacking him with a bin. Kane closes in while Giles and Buffy gear up for the hunt, and I'm amazed at how long Willow was able to outrun Oz for before she inevitably falls. Oz, however, smells something and splits, giving Willow the chance to run to the library and blurt to Buffy and Giles that Oz is the werewolf.
He said he was going through all these changes, then he went through all these changes.
Giles is so shocked by this revelation, his glasses keep disappearing and reappearing. Willow begs them not to kill him, but Giles assures her that it's only a tranquilizer gun and they all head out. Oz walks right into Kane's trap, but Buffy kicks him before he can pull the trigger and they fight over the gun. Then Oz attacks, and because of the scuffle, Giles can't get a clean shot, so Willow grabs the gun and does it herself.
They shot Oz.
Kane questions Buffy's manliness, so she bends his gun with her bare hands and tells him to get out.
How about you let the door hit you in the ass on the way out of town?
Yes, sod off, Kane, you leave Oz alone. The next day, Larry is a changed man, picking up a harassed girl's books and thanks Xander for helping him. Xander doubts that Willow and Oz will work out, but Willow takes her fate into her own hands and wants to make things work with Oz.
Yeah, okay, werewolf. That's not all the time. I mean, 3 days out of the month. I'm not much fun to be around either.
He promises not to bite her, she runs back for a kiss, he realises that he's in love, and oh my god, this is all too adorable, my heart is going to burst. Okay, so I love this episode for so many reasons, so quite a bit to cover here. First of all, it revolves around Oz, and you know I love me some Oz, so it's great to explore his character some more. But while this episode is about discovering the identity of the werewolf, it also looks realistically at insecurity and relationships. We've got Buffy, the victim of obsession, Xander distracted by jealousy, Willow insecure about why her and Oz aren't progressing, and Oz trying to come to terms with the changes he's going through. I like the brief scene between Cordelia and Willow, and they are one of those rarely seen team-ups that really work, like Willow and Angel, or Oz and Buffy. There are a couple of misdirects in this episode, with Larry and Oz both being bitten, and also the gang initially thinking that Teresa was the victim of the werewolf. I'm glad there was only a little Angel in this episode, because frankly Angelus can kiss my ass sideways, and it's nice that we get a break from Spike and Drusilla for a bit, to instead focus on the main plot. I guess we need an antagonist, and Kane is sufficiently slimy, but I'm glad he didn't dominate the episode. I like the Larry subplot, and I like the way the gay storyline was handled, which is impressive for a 90s show, and this will come up again. That's what I love about Buffy. Things are planned out in advance and often calls back to previous episodes, which makes the universe feel more detailed. This episode alone references Witch, I, Robot You, Jane, Teacher's Pet, and The Pack, and maybe even a little Halloween if you take into account Larry mentioning beating up Xander. In conclusion, Oz is adorable and this episode is great. Now before I get to the death count, I have to shout out Keith Campbell, who is the werewolf performer in this episode. Great job, dude! We have 2 more for our count. One transformation, Teresa, sired by Angel as a message to Buffy, and 1 vampire death. Again, Teresa, who was killed by Xander in his first ever unassisted slaying. That brings our running total to 13 humans, 4 transformations, 27 vampires, 1 zombie, 1 mummy, 3 demons, and 1 monster. So there you have it. That was Phases. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot. Or consider subscribing if you want more videos like this one. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and don't let the vampires bite.